it's not a job that scales. Like business class is a pre-recorded online course called business class because it's aviation themed and I dress like a flight.
Yeah.
Went to raise it and I realized I had great deal flow. Founders would get on the phone with me. I could get into deals that were closed. I've done that several times. Invested in Liquid Death at 50 posts. They're at 700 million now.
Welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. We're here to bring you the latest and greatest from the Silicon Valley, where unicorns roam and innovation never sleeps. We've got top investors, superstar founders, and well-known tech executives lined up to share their secrets on building and investing in successful companies. Just a quick disclaimer, while we may sound like financial geniuses, but please don't mistake us for your friendly neighborhood financial advisors. So let's get started and dive into the wild world of tech entrepreneurship. Hi, Sophia. Welcome to Smart Venture Podcast today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm sorry, before we hop on this call, I literally said so many things to Sophia. I'm you are literally my dream guest to have. And then I feel like you are just absolutely killing it in everything that you have done so far. And I wanted to go back a little bit on you talk about this, your family dynamic on Stephen Bartlett's show. And you were this person who were stealing from the grocery store to starting this multi-hundreds millions of dollar company. And I feel and then now you're running your own fund. I want to know what is one moment that in your life that's early on that shaped into who you are today?
I mean, I think, when I got my first job at Subway when I was 15, I think I was a sandwich artist.
Sandwich
And I remember my dad told me to go in and ask for the manager with my resume, which had nothing on it. I guess it was a job application. And if they weren't there, to come back and ask when the manager will be there, and then go in when the manager was there and introduce myself. And then once I got the job, my dad told me even when there's nothing to do and the floor is clean, sweep the floor. Don't stand around, basically. And I think that work ethic really stuck with me, but there's definitely a gap in the work ethic period that you just referred to, which was me trying to do as little as possible because I wasn't cut out to do a 9 to 5, but also I didn't even understand what a career was. That's one thing I can't attribute entrepreneurship to. My parents very much worked, but the whole idea of moving up in a career or, I didn't go to college, so that was all accidental. And I think the work ethic was something that my dad instilled in me very early on.
What do you think is your dream career? I feel and then who's on your personal board of advisors when it comes to career development? Since obviously your dad plays a really important role as telling about the work ethic, but you figure out so many things on your own. You pilot so many things and you're such a creative just by trust fund the name and then nasty girl the name. I know that you talk about this in Jason Calacanis podcast. I feel you are one of the most creative person when it comes to branding. I wonder how does these ideas, where do they come from?
It's a good question. I mean, in terms of my personal board of advisors, there are people, I can just look at my texts because I text them all day. There's my personal board of advisors. I talk to Rob Hayes a lot from First Round. So he's one of my LPs. He's always been super duper helpful. Shameen at BAM is really helpful to me. I'm literally just looking at my text. There's just so many people that I, text. Nicole Wishoff, she's a few years ahead of me in terms of her fund, also an emerging manager, but has been really generous in given me kind of a view of the landscape as, someone who just raised my first fund. Let's see. I mean, the list goes on. I would say I chat with Rob Hayes more than anyone. Heaton Shaw is another person I talk to a lot. Ryan Hoover is someone I talk to a lot. It's a long list. That's one thing about entrepreneurship or even starting a fund or building anything from the ground up, especially when you haven't worked at a firm or you haven't built a company before. There's so many blind spots. It doesn't matter, how much education you have. The people around you are the kind of the web. They are the mesh that fills in your blind spots. And all you have to do is ask questions, and people are generally really generous and excited to help out. In terms of branding, where did I get this branding acumen? It's a good question. I think I've always had an irreverent perspective, which is such a, I don't know about that word. It's saying edgy. It's not that interesting or descriptive, but I think I've always had a little bit of an outsider's view or oblique point of view that gives me an advantage when it comes to, or even naivete. It gives me an advantage when it comes to creating a brand that cuts through the noise, because I don't, trust fund is like, could be polarizing. Nasty Gal certainly was. And I had to buy the URL from a porn, like a squatter troll. I don't know what you call them, but they cut through the noise. So it's like the name of the fund alone, people are like, oh shit, like that's the best name ever. Guys didn't do that with Girlboss. But like with trust fund, it's really gratifying to go to the upfront summit and I'll be like, yeah, I do this thing. And they're like, God damn it. Why didn't I think of that name? It's so good. Haha. So it's fun. Like it's everything I do is, this is trust funds a play on words. Girlboss, I don't know. I just put two words together and they touched and it became this whole
They
other
had
thing.
to match.
But it was, the reference for Girlboss was this like
A Japanese movie or something.
yeah, like Japanese female revenge film, which is like super funny and stylish and kind of bad, but one of Tarantino's inspirations, references. And then, Nasty Gal was an album by this woman, Betty Davis, who was married to Miles Davis, this amazing funk singer. So it's also just like cultural references, because I cared more about music probably than anything before I accidentally started a business. So I've always infused, I guess, that the personality or the culture, the things that I really appreciate into what I do and the voice of what I do.
I wonder, like, if you're starting out today, if trust fund is your first project ever, what would you do to make it like huge? Like, let's say if Sophia Amoruso was not a super like iconic person who started this
You're
like
so
amazing
nice.
brand.
You're
No,
so
I'm not joking. You're absolutely killing it, and that you're like unfailable at this point in your life. Like you could just do anything, and then people would just like throw money or something, and then
no.
you're like uncancelable, like literally right now
What
at
are
this
you
point. Like
talking about? I've already been canceled. Like,
no, like I mean, you are uncancelable. Like I feel like you've done so many like amazing entities in your life. You created this like, most people just gave up at one point of their career. Like I feel like they just like call it a day or something. But you're like constantly still like
oh my
hustling. Like
God,
you're
it's
having a
brutal.
new venture every few years. Last time I saw you had like business class, and then now you're like you have trust fund, and then been just
Yeah.
like following your like stalking your
Oh yeah, business
whatever.
class.
Like I'm
Talk about that brand. That's another fun play on words. I have an online
yeah.
course
I
called Business
wonder.
Class.
So business class is probably making a lot of money, as like it's probably not, because when people think about like starting a fund, people think, oh my God, like now I have like 10 million. They just think, oh, this person have $10 million to spend now. But it's oh my God, like imagine all the fee you have to pay, like the back office, blah, 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 and like all the operational costs. But you have to actually make a business on the side to actually spend the money on your own, or like just having a lifestyle that's like, survive or something. So I
Yeah.
wonder, what's your like personal like journey like to building up this empire or like this different basket of business, and what's your end goal? And I just have so many questions. I'm like,
Oh
I'm
my
gonna
God. Yeah, I mean, right now the dream job would be doing what I'm doing with Trust Fund and Business Class, but Trust Fund is really my focus. It's like, it's not a job that scales. Like Business Class is a pre-recorded online course called Business Class because it's aviation themed and I'm dressed like a
yeah,
flight
yeah, yeah.
attendant in each of the
I saw that. I saw.
modules.
I'm like, oh my God, you are such a genius with. Oh, like
It's
and you're
like
so good with like everything.
endlessly,
Yeah.
punny and funny and copywriting. And I'm not, my mom's a writer, so I think I might have gotten some of that from her. But Business Class was something I started during COVID. I had left my second company, Girlboss, after I sold at the end of 2019. The business was events and brand partnerships. When COVID hit, brands pulled all their dollars. We couldn't do events. So I was like, okay, I'm going to move on. The company had sold. And so I'd seen all these online course creators and this like formula. I was like, you know what? I never want to invent a business model again. Like I'm great at brand. I'm great at starting things. I tend to like, you know, build things that people rally around and identify with and think are funny. And I don't take myself too seriously and hopefully also offer value at the same time. And realized I had a lot to share. I went from dressing people and that inspiring them, like the motorcycle jacket being like as inspiring as eventually the book became. And that motorcycle jacket, when a girl bought a motorcycle jacket at Nasty Gal, she was like, oh my God, like I can take on the world. Like before we started recording, you're talking about like Nasty Gal clothes. And it's like, it's this, it's not clothes. Girlboss was like this. It wasn't a book. It was like so much more like, wow, I can see myself in this future that's just a few steps ahead of me. And with, Business Class to me, while it's an online course for entrepreneurs, it's like, it's the same thing. It's like seeing yourself in this future that's not that too far ahead of you. And the person leading it, me, is someone that like you can relate to, because I don't have like the pedigree that a lot of the people who are out there dispensing advice have, which is like not that relatable. So what I realized is like, okay, I've inspired people, but now I want to like give them knowledge. So I've accumulated all of this knowledge and all of these relationships and learned from my own mistakes, but also hired really great leaders and watched people do it well, and also know what good looks like, even in the places that I didn't do a good job. And it's incredibly gratifying to pass along what it is that I've learned over the course of my career. I've extracted enough value, and whatever, I'll be 40 in April. I'm not sure like if it's an age thing or an I'm exhausted by building businesses thing, but harvesting all of my experience for a new generation of entrepreneurs is so wildly fulfilling. And I've done that through business class, which is, it's a digital product. It's relatively on autopilot. Yeah, it's done like 5 million profitably since I started it. I'm not building a big organization. I have one person full-time in business class. And it's like, it doesn't really require much of my time. Trust fund is like, I'm not even trading my time for money because the management fees are so small. So I can't even say, but there's nothing that scales. The only thing that scales with a venture fund, it takes 10 years for there to be any kind of efficiencies, right? The money is the efficiency, but it's not your time spent. It's not your time with LPs. It's not your, it's like, there's no efficiencies. You're having coffee, you're having dinner, you're talking to founders, you're on the phone, you're looking at decks, you're writing a deal memo, having coffees with other GPs and investors. So there's absolutely no wait for that to become more efficient than it is, beyond creating some systems and a great CRM and, hiring a team. So having a fund is a very different job. And I have a $5 million fund. The management fees are small. I've written 12 checks out of the fund. And ultimately, in terms of like this phase, it's just, I guess, like the theme is I just want to work with founders. I like being in the weeds. I'm not someone that should be tasked with growing like a massive organization. I like being close to founders. I like looking at all of these amazing companies that are being founded. And I just love learning. I'm just kind of, I don't want to hire a huge executive team and have them tell me like, that's my job. Like, I want to go do the things that eventually when you have 50 people, you have to delegate. And I just don't like doing that. I'm kind of useless once, and not even redundant useless, just actually useless as a leader, because it's not 50 people is not in my future.
How, I guess, like when you are thinking about starting your venture fund, like what do you think is the value add? Because I saw that you invest in, a lot of consumer facing things. For example, for like MoonPay and Public, I feel like, or Superhuman, I feel like they're all like consumer facing SaaS product. And I wonder, like, what's your thought on the edge, or like Liquid Death? Like, obviously, it's like a consumer product. And I wonder, what's your thought on like your edge when you became an investor? And when you're talking about like running funds, like a $5 million fund, it's still going to take forever to like fundraise. And now, like, I guess, like, when you're investing on your own, you could just be like, oh, whatever. If I lose like this, like 50K or something, it's my own money. You don't have to be responsible. But like when, let's say, your friends invest in your company, how do you deal with the fact that like they're losing their money or something? Like, I guess maybe I'm just like so negative when it comes to thinking that way. But like a lot of people say you should never think that way. But I wonder, like, what's your thought process on that? And then you obviously have a lot to offer to the entrepreneurs, from branding to experiences to like operating like mindsets and everything. But I wonder, how do you translate that into helping SaaS companies when they
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So as an angel, I invested in over 20 companies. Too much.
You have really good portfolio.
Thank
I'm
you.
just
Yeah.
on your
So I
website.
didn't
I'm like,
intend for it to be fund zero. I was stage agnostic and sector agnostic, and invested in things I liked. And, some of them were later. Invested in Liquid Death at 50 posts. They're at 700 million now. I invested in this Passport, which is this international shipping, like logistics software layer, passportshipping.com. I invested in that like super early, and that's like a 47x return. I've sold secondary in 2 of those companies, which is awesome because I have great relationships with the founders. And some of it was consumer, some of it was B2B. Passport is very B2B. I think Superhuman is increasingly B2B. I don't think people who aren't at their desk are using it just to email their mom or whatever. Like, I do see it as a B2B product, but I didn't have a thesis as an angel. I was like, I understand this. I know why people are using it, or I just think this is a great opportunity. when I went to raise it, well, and I realized I had great deal flow, founders would get on the phone with me. I could get into deals that were closed. I've done that several times as an angel. And now I'll just read Axios and go shopping and be like, oh, this deal is closed. Not for me. Like I'll just write whoever at the firm like led the deal and be like, hey, is it really? Because I have a really friendly collaborative check, 200K. It's not gonna really change the game for anybody. Like, can I talk to the founder? And I've done that, I don't know what, maybe 4 times now, where a deal's closed and I just like go inbound and I'm like, really? So I have, and also can negotiate advisory shares on top of it, which as an angel is great, but for the fund is awesome because I roll them into the fund effectively, lowering the valuation, the entry price at the time of my investment. So realized I love doing it. Like I said, I love working with founders. I love learning, and was sitting on this like kind of crazy stack of advantage as a fund manager as I was considering doing it. And so the full stack, I guess, and when it comes to like B2B SaaS, right? I was like, okay, I need a thesis. I want to focus. Great. I invested in, Liquid Death. They did great. I built a consumer business, but I understand the psychology of the person choosing Shopify over Squarespace, which are B2B products, right? And they're choosing Shopify or Squarespace over Shopify or whatever because of the brand, because they are consumers, right? I started my first business on eBay. There weren't other choices. There was no Etsy, whatever. It was late 2006, but I was a consumer of that. And I built a really big business off the back of that. And then I was like authorized.net. And then I don't even know if I ever used Stripe, honestly, like at Nasty Gal, it was so early. And the power of those tools to change someone's life. And for example, through the fund, I invested in a dental labor marketplace called Toothio. So Kraft led their seed round earlier last year. And, women, mostly women, dental hygienists can now, because of this piece of software, go work on their own schedule and book shifts at dentist offices in a way they've never been able to. Literally just in that Toothio, that piece of software is doing for them what eBay did for me. And I understand the aspiration of the 99% of people that are starting businesses, SMBs, freelancers, creators, solopreneurs, side hustlers, and then also, venture-backed founders, and how this software can be such a huge unlock, and the aspiration of that product, both from the product itself and the way it's designed and the way it guides you through understanding, like, okay, this is what employing somebody looks like in Gusto. I would not have known how to hire somebody or what I need to file at the end of the year. But guess what? I pushed some buttons and this thing's prompting me to do this. And now I'm an employer that's totally compliant. That's nuts. I can push a button and run payroll. Like I don't have to like email ADP. I didn't even know what ADP is. Like most people starting businesses don't. So the product creating the inputs for a user that the inputs are, I don't know, you mean the fields, right? Whatever. The product demystifies what the founder needs to know just by existing and onboarding them. That's a really powerful thing. So I see these products as consumer products because the person choosing, like I said, Shopify over Squarespace or Gusto over JustWorks, they're not putting out an RFP for, they don't know what SaaS is. They're considering these things. They don't call it logistics. They call it shipping. It's just different. And I understand that person. And I don't want to build a consumer. I don't want to spend the second half of my career helping people build the type of business that I couldn't into $1 billion. I don't think that fashion businesses for the most part are venture backable businesses. And it's not what I want to spend my time doing. And so in terms of this, like what I'm talking about is like, okay, I can get on the phone with founders. I have a really vast network of investors and LPs that I've known for a very long time. Like I met Jeremy Liu in 2012 and Jeff Jordan. They both flew down separately to LA and to possibly invest in Nasty Gal, right? So, and they're both LPs in the fund. So it's like, it's interesting to be established as an emerging manager, right? I'm like a known entity, but I'm like still very new at this job. And it's not the same as writing an angel check and losing my money. You're right. And then I understand the founder's experience, the experience of the founder I'm investing in. So I understand their end user. I understand the experience of the founder that I can make an impact on directly by working with them. I've got amazing access. I think I have pretty good taste. I have an okay angel track record. And then also have this like platform, right? I've got like, and it's the runoff of having done stuff. Like I wasn't like, I'm going to build a LinkedIn audience or I'm going to build an Instagram audience. It was like, I wrote a book, made a bunch of noise, did some stuff, was on the cover of Forbes and all this crazy shit. And so I have an audience of people who read Girlboss who are stoked on entrepreneurship. And so they don't care about fashion. It's been, it's been 10 years, right? We're all older. The Girlboss was yay, and now we've all fallen on our faces and we're like, okay, that was cute, but I need to build something that makes me money. I want to buy a house, whatever. So I have this really qualified audience as well who are interested in these types of products. And so I think one validation point of that, because I could be like, oh yeah, they're, they like B2B software products. Totally. That's an advantage. That's my wedge. But in the last year, I've worked with Notion and SurveyMonkey and SoFi and Dell and a bunch of B2B brands who've come to me and said like, hey, we want to pay you to like post about us. We want to do an integration with your social stuff. And like, I don't have any management fees. And this was, a lot of it was before the fund. So I'm like, sure. But there's really smart marketers who are doing their own diligence on me, not as a fund manager, but as someone who can speak credibly to an audience that's qualified to hear about those types of products, which is like, well, thank you very much for validating what I think is GP thesis fit. It's not something I'm just saying, it's saying that it's something that people who, are putting their jobs at risk are validating with their budgets. So yeah, I love this job and I want to build a really enduring fund. It's a year and some change in since I wrote the first check. And my job now is, if I'm the inventory and I'm building a platform, how do I scale that and the impact I can make and the relationships that I have? And how do I raise another fund that, isn't a $5 million fund, but something that's 20 or 30 where I can actually pay
I
myself.
think I'm sorry. I think you can raise a bigger fund. And I wonder, yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, why do you set as like, I know that you didn't set as 5 million. I think you probably set like as something smaller, but like you accidentally raised like 6 million over like a weekend or something. I wonder, how does a fundraising journey look like for you? And then when you're like, if you're building the fund from today, I just want to say like all these branding, this is like such a branding genius, like our focus. And then like, I'm just looking at your fund page. They're not even your pictures. I
I
don't really
know
know who
the
you
about us
are. Like,
page. The about us
what
page
is
is so
going
funny.
on, man? Like, I think you're just like such an authentic person, but like, I just like wanted to know, like, what's your roadmap? Nowadays, like everyone and their mom is like trying to start a fund. And especially with the help of like Angelus and every operator of any size of startup are like, oh, actually, I'm angel investing on the side. But I wonder, like, how do you kind of, like you said, like cut through the noise? And obviously, branding is one big factor. And then obviously, you are a founder. And then how do you kind of like articulate the value add to the founders? And then also like there's a rising new generation of people. They're coming, like they may not be. I'm a fan of Nazigo, but like I just had a 7-month-old son. And then like I feel like when they are becoming the next generation of like builders or whatever, how do you kind of like create the noise to the next generation of people?
Totally. I mean, honestly, I think it's fun and humor and showing people the mirror of I want my logo in that portfolio. I want she's picking winners and I want our logo next to that company because I think that's an awesome company and I want to know that founder and I know that she can help, right? And so I think like it's weird just to talk about yourself and be like, "Oh, like here's how I can help or whatever." So I screenshot everything that founders send me that are like, oh my God, whatever. A couple of recently, two of Baton Market, one of my investments through the fund, were like two people heard about the job through you. And I was like, what did I even post about it? And they're like, no, they like came to the website and then they checked us out. And there's some kind of maybe it's like, oh wow, because Sophia invested in this, it's like a great place to work. And I have gotten on the phone with angel companies to close and with trust fund companies, like close a candidate. Like this is why this is a really exciting opportunity. So that's fun. But I have two monitors, couple slides in my deck, and it's like, Sophia, your post and newsletter drove more leads to the waitlist than all of our investors combined. Or another founder saying, the founder of Baton Market that I just mentioned, saw that you invested in Browse AI, another company, tried it out today, super useful, officially a paying customer already, good investment. It's like, that's so gratifying whatever. So I don't if I made it up, it wouldn't work. I wouldn't, there's, there's goodwill and word of mouth. And also with trust fund, like in terms of building a brand, it's like, I've always had an outsider perspective, I guess, for everything that I do. I think there's just like an opportunity to infuse like fun and humor into the venture world. And I don't want to pussyfoot into it. So I threw a big party at LA Tech Week, and I don't know what else. I threw a poker game for like 50 women at my house, and had some awesome early stage founders and emerging fund managers. And I'm actually having something on Monday for the upfront thing. I've got like 95 people RSVP'd, and it's going to rain, and I don't have that much space inside, so that's going to be interesting. But it's just like, when there are opportunities, I seize them. And it's like, I haven't paid myself anything out of the management fees this year, or at all, but I'm going to throw a party. But also I'm going to get some sponsors, because I don't, to cover it, which I have, which is awesome. Mercury, Tactic. Have you heard of Tactic?
No, what is Tactic?
Dude, it's just so weird that people don't know about it. Like, I rely on stuff like, if AngelList didn't exist, I wouldn't be doing this job, trying to figure it out with like pieces of paper or whatever people did 20 years ago. Similarly, Tactic it's fund modeling software. So instead of building an unwieldy spreadsheet that like breaks every time, that's not my strong suit. You can create an account, you can model out different scenarios, you can model out different funds, different size funds, you can track the performance of all your companies, you can invite LPs to come check it out. It's like super powerful, but it's so weird. It's just really weird that no one's heard about it. Anyway, that's the power of software, right? That allows me to do this job. In terms of fund managers that are tourists, I think that time, like, that was a fun time. Like, it wasn't fun for me. I wasn't raising a fund, but had I started a fund 2 years ago, I wouldn't have had to learn what I have. I wouldn't have had to answer the tough questions that I have. People aren't just throwing money at me, sure, like 50, 100, 200K checks, but I'm not asking, I'm not raising like a fund that even has room for a $2 million, institutional check. So those are going to be very different conversations. So it's not like easy. It's like, it's hard. And I think it's been harder for me to raise 5 million than it was for someone less established or whatever to raise 20 a couple of years ago, because it was easy. People were throwing all kinds of money around. And I'm actually really grateful that I raised a fund last year and have had to answer tough questions and learn things that I wouldn't have been forced to if everybody did just throw $5 million or 20 at me and say like, awesome, yay, trust fund. There's so much more than that. It's forced me to, learn how to do this job and understand things that I wouldn't have were it to have been easier. And those people are going to have a hard time raising another fund. And who knows what fund 2 looks like for me, but I'm going to make noise and
I don't, yeah, I think you worth like a lot more than $5 million in my eye. And I feel like even just your fans, like I feel like a lot of people really grow. I would literally watch random people on TikTok, and then they're like, I saw them having like, I don't know, 200K followers or like 500K followers. For TikTok, I'm like very insensitive about like how many followers people have. And then they're like, oh, my biggest dream is like to do like Sophia Amoruso's makeup. And then they're like, they already done like Kris Jenner's makeup and basically stuff like this. I feel like you're like so much more like influential than $5 million in general for like a fund. And like, I wonder if you're like starting out today, what would you do to make trust fund a success? And like you mentioned, there's a lot of people with less experience, less track record, raising bigger fund. And I wonder in your observation, what makes a person like a successful at like fundraising and managing a fund?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty new here, so I've only observed so many people raising funds. So I'll caveat my answer with that. And in terms of raising 5, just to go back to me being worth more than 5, it's like I can write friendly checks and get into any deal if it's 200, 250K. Okay. I'm leading, so I don't have to duke it out with top tier firms. I'm their buddy, and there's room for me. If I had a $50 million fund, I would have to be leading or writing 1,000 checks or having like 80% reserves with this check size. So it was a strategic move for fund 1 to be writing the check size that I am. And the fund size is limited as a result of that. It still works at 20 or 30, but I think it'd be a lot harder not to lead a $200 million fund, which I don't know if I have aspirations for. I mean, the people who like, who's doing a good job fundraising right now, like I don't even have an answer, right? So I think who's doing a good job or who has done a good job is very dependent on the macro environment and sentiment around investing in funds and, where people are putting their money, where allocators are allocating. But I think either it's people with a really strong, deep, like technical expertise that can vet a very specific sector in a way that no one else can and can convince other people of that, who ideally already has relationships, right? I can't imagine starting a fund with no relationships, and I just wouldn't. I mean, I started it because I think I'm going to be good at it and I have an advantage. It's not like, wow, I woke up when, I came out of high school and was like, oh, I'm going to do this and start zero. I wouldn't have been an employable analyst. So it just wouldn't have done that. But, and then also, people talk a lot about operators, but I think, fund managers that have built pretty sizable businesses know what it takes, have done all the shit, have just been, experienced the highs and the lows, make great GPs. And I think also, second time founders make great founders to invest in. So that's always a bonus. And then there's the GP who makes noise, right? And that really works. Like creating content, Nicole Wishoff has done a great job. I mean, she's a lot more to offer than creating content, but when you elevate, everybody's a thought leader in some way or can become one. And when you elevate yourself to that level, even on your own channels, other people tend to follow suit and believe that you're a thought leader. And they can see your personality instead of just your logo on your fund site, they're like, oh, wow, I identify with this person. So I think personality and who it is, like the person who's investing, has become increasingly important than the firm. And even the multi-stage firms, their partners are tweeting and doing shit now they didn't used to, because it's table stakes, and it's their reputation and logo alone aren't something that they should be relying on as they get kind of long in the teeth.
Totally. I wonder, who are your first? I know that, like, obviously, like Marc Andreessen and Chris Dixon, they all invest in your fund. And I wonder, like, who do you identify as like your ideal LP? And how did you went about learning about how to do this? Because obviously this is so much work to learn about starting a fund, as well as winning, picking, having deal flow. It's one thing. And then there's also the other side of things, which is managing a small business, and then you're managing multiple business at this point. I wonder, how do you figure out how to do this thing? And then do you have like a system for yourself, like, creating an Excel sheet on like, here's like 45 people I met and I need to like learn XYZ?
I've reverse engineered almost everything. So if I don't know it, I ask it. If I don't know them, I find them. I watched Ryan at Weekend Fun, Product Hunt, but Weekend Fun. And then I'm an LP in Shrug, in Neve Drawer and Marisha's fund, and saw their investor updates and saw, the way they show performance of their companies, the way they offer SPVs to people, and they do these really interesting drops. I'm not doing that. Saw how they built their brand and made noise with merch and, stuff on the Jumbotron in Times Square. But, watched Neve, who had, he'd spent time at Product Hunt, but wasn't someone who spun out of a venture firm, learn along the way and do things differently. I mean, literally, here's how. It's been on my desk for like 2 years.
It's a venture capital book, The Business of Venture Capital. Yeah, I own the same book.
And it's like, it's like dog-eared and like annotated and like textbook. Listening to Swimming with Allocators and the 10X podcast and, the Limited Partner podcast and Venture Unlocked and whatever, reading every Sapphire Ventures stuff and signing up for Signature Block. And there's so much out there. And then just asking lots of questions and asking somebody like, what's in your data room? Send me a list. Oh, can I see your DDQ? I don't have a due diligence questionnaire for Fund 2 yet, but how in depth does that need to be? Holy shit, I need to like articulate a cybersecurity policy when I go raise Fund 2. Like, this is it will be an institutional fund. It's like, what got me here will not get me there. It's not like a cute, like, Sophia, anybody will give her money. It's like, no, like these people are investing, they're investing other people's money. These aren't just high net worth folks with conviction who can afford to lose couple hundred grand. So a lot of it's just like watching what other people are doing it my own way. You know, my LP updates are really fun and funny. I signed up for Affinity, expensive, but I think it's incredible. My relationships are like half of my value. And I have, I've got, this is how, a good part of how I'm going to scale myself is, I've got lists of LPs by name, LPs by organization, of sponsors, of meetings that I want to book for upfront, venture firms, and then individual, venture investors that I want to stay on top of. I have like all of our opportunities and like, a Kanban board and mark them based on status like all the time. I have all of my notes in here. I have a whole list of resources for my founders. So it's like, oh, cool, here's some software. Great, you could use this, or here's some AI marketing thing, or here's a creative agency that if when you need to hire someone to do your brand, like here's this database. It's all labeled by whatever. Here's some like e-com businesses that are under 50 million in revenue who could be great customers for you, because I know a lot of them because I was in consumer. But I don't need to think about it and regurgitate it on text every time someone's trying, one of my companies is asking for intros. I can, filter this and send them a spreadsheet and say, send me a blurb. I'm going to fire this off, and ultimately have like a virtual assistant fired off or whatever. Things like that, and systems and how you request things from me, whatever. Like as I scale, as I work with more founders, that's going to be the way that I'm able to scale myself. I mean, what else do I have open? I have DocSend, AngelList, Tactic, Google Drive. I have Typeform, which connects to Affinity for like the application for founders to submit their pitches. I've got some sheets open. I created a job board for my companies with Airtable and Softer.io. Love it. I sit around and like tweak and build this stuff myself. I mean, the websites I have: the Fund CFO newsletter, Signature Block, the Data Revolution in Venture Capital open. I have the Venture Investors Playbook Part 1 from Flybridge. I've got Carta's website open. This is Starting a Fund Venture Playbook, but this sounds a little bit like rookie for me. I'm going to close it. I've got Gusto open because I have an analyst on my team who is awesome. And so I've got some payroll, LinkedIn. I mean, it's like I could go on. I've DocuSign open. What else is bookmarked? Todoist. DocSend to PDF with a 2.com. You can like rip any PDF out of a DocSend and keep it. It's awesome. I use VimCal. I just started using this new email thing. I'm trying it out called Missive. I'm a sucker for free trials.
Until they automatically charge you a credit card.
Yeah. And then I emailed them and I'm like, please, 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 please.
Take me off.
Please.
Oh my God. I wonder okay, so let's say you meet the first round venture partner, and let's say you meet Rob, and like, how do you maintain the relationship? What's your, like, I guess, like, do you have to do like a certain amount of favor for them, or like just being a thought partner?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, how do you, I guess, like, just maintain the relationship? Because I feel like everybody is busy. Obviously, you're very important, but on the other hand, like, yeah, I wonder if I'm like asking you, hey, Sophia, tell me 55 things of like how to start a fund or something, you will be like, okay, remove, block. But I wonder how to be.
Too many. Yeah. I mean, Rob, I think part of it takes time. Relationships take time. I will be 40 in April. I don't know if I already said that, but
you don't look 40 at all.
Thanks. I got a Zoom filter. Thanks for doing Zoom and not Riverside, because I've got this like little filter and this.
You look great.
Thanks. But like a lot of the people who are helping me I've known for a long time. And I met when I was an entrepreneur, Rob, I mentioned the Upfront Summit, but I went there, they invite lots of founders. I went there as a founder for years before I started the fund. And now now I'm going as a fund manager, and there's LPs and there's a whole LP day, which is like, okay, now I'm paying for it. But it takes time. It's showing up in the places they already are. Rob isn't super active first round, like he was there for a long time. He made some amazing investments. He's still there, but he still writes checks. But it's probably going to be someone else that you're meeting that's going to be at the thing. And you just keep popping up. You find a way to get in, and then you pop up and you're there. Oh, look, there I am again. Oh, interesting. Are you a peer? Why are you invited? Maybe you snuck in. There's just, a sense of ubiquity, or I don't know if that's the word.
Like
Where
they got familiar with you. Like it's about
yeah,
mental
and it takes time.
repetition.
Every small win is an opportunity to like leverage, whether it's like you're on a podcast or you know, have some accolade or something to show, even if it's small, it's on your LinkedIn, it's validating, right? You can cold write someone on LinkedIn or email them like, hey, here's a little bit more about me. I was on Grace's podcast. If you want to know, well, that's okay. Well, Grace anointed me as a, you know, someone that's worth talking to. You know, it could be a much smaller podcast, whatever. Well, that's interesting. And then each of those things is a little wedge or a little bit of leverage to, you know, continue, you know, post it on your LinkedIn, whatever. And it's just like, it's building relevance. And a lot of that has to do with other people opting in and participating in the content you create or talking about you. Ask for introductions and ask for advice. People love giving advice. I have mentors because I ask for advice, not because they show up and just start mansplaining, you know? People are really flattered when you ask them advice. I love this job because I get to be a mentor. And it makes me feel very good about myself that I can help people. It's like a selfish, you know, like asking, it's like a compliment to be asked advice. And I think
Even
people,
for you, I bet like thousands of people are lining up to ask you for advice.
yeah, it's a lot, and a lot of intros, just like this person and this person, this fund. The intros are interesting, and I'm starting to have like, okay, I'm not taking informational calls. Like, I don't know how to say it, but it's like my schedule's jammed, just doing my job. And but I am in a yes, I'm new here. Like there are periods of yes, and without burning out, I'm much more in a yes mode than I have been in the last several years because I need to build relationships and I want to meet founders and I am establishing myself not as like the nasty gal or the girl boss or like, oh, this is a hobby. Oh, she has a fund, cute. Oh, it's an angel fund. Is it a rolling fund? Like, what is it? Oh, it's a real fund. Oh shit. Maybe she knows something. No. Like I have to like, I have to prove myself. I can't just be like the nasty gal who throws a party during LA Tech Week. You know, there's
I mean,
like,
what's wrong with that? Like
because I'm
right?
managing people's money and am committed to, you know, a fund that has to create returns. And there's more to it than hype, but I can do that too.
I mean, what do you think managing a fund kind of like draws to you? Like what make it attractive besides, oh, it's a fund. So
Managing the fund, I'd say like if that's the language is not what attracts me
Mhm.
to it, like that's the job. What attracts me to it is that I have an opportunity to learn, that I have an opportunity to make an impact, that I can create a job for myself. I think like I'm need a job, like I need to, you know, not like retired.
I think you already made it. So, but anyway,
I
keep
like made it, but I'm not like retired rich, whatever. Because, you know, the advantage that I told you about, this like weird stack, because I love it, because I'm scrappy still when it comes to like sourcing or winning or having someone else co-sign on something I think could be a good idea or teach me what might not be right about it. I just love working with founders and I like being in the weeds and I have a lot to give and it energizes me. And my learning curve is, I think my learning curve is about as steep as my ability to learn this pace that I can learn right now. I've definitely been in jobs, you know, at Nasty Gal where the learning curve and speed, the velocity of that curve was beyond my ability. And this is very challenging and I still have a lot to learn, but I feel like what I don't know, I can learn, and what I don't need to learn, I can rent from people who have educations or experience and something complementary to my skill set, which can't be learned.
what do you think is like the most challenging thing for you?
Burnout, I think just like managing my time. Cause I'll just like sit in Airtable and make a job board that none of my founders asked for. And just, yeah, no, I'm just like, look, here's some resources. I'm just like, they're not asking for most of the stuff you know, a lot of the stuff I'm providing for them, but I'm like, they don't know that I know this person and can make an intro. Oh, holy shit.
Mhm.
That could be a game changer. So it's like generating, if there's no end to the value I would to provide, and there's no end to the amount of learning I could take on. Yeah, I don't know. So I think it's like getting enough sleep right now. It's because it is very much a
I
startup.
need to send you like a mushroom hot chocolate or something so you can go to
No, mushrooms don't agree with me. I like high noon and
what is
mezcal.
high noon?
It's like
Oh
this
God.
like this great like canned hard spritz seltzer. I don't know, but it's good. They have a black cherry flavor that's hella good, and they should send me some for free.
Oh, if they're listening to this podcast,
No, they're
please
not.
send
They're
something
like
this
they're
way.
like a really exploding business, but I'm not a psychedelic weed party drug. I have tattoos, and I think people think that like I'm edgy. It's like, no, I just like drinking once in a while.
Thanks for tuning into Smart Venture Podcast. If you learned something from the episode or even just mildly tolerated me, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. I promise I will keep bringing you more successful, insightful interviews and insider tips about startups. Remember, sharing is caring. So tell your friends to listen too, or enemies, I won't judge. Until next time, keep venturing smartly.